Hello, welcome to another episode of Forgotten Cemeteries of the Pacific Northwest. Today we're at Harmony Cemetery, located in Sheridan, Oregon, Polk County. Alternative names, just one, Union Baptist. So let's go meet some of the local residents and hear their story. A little history about this cemetery. It's sort of kind of all over the place. Oregon Burial Site Guide labels the start year as 1861. From what I read, the site was on the donation land claim of William Edes. Part of the land was going to be free public burial ground, so that was kind of nice of him. Additionally, land was donated for a church at a later date. The sign, however, says the land was bought and this house, I'm assuming church, was built in 1872. And the sign mentions that the Union Baptist Church was organized by an elder C.C. Riley in 1854. Sources go on to say the first to be buried here was a George in 1869 or 1872. However, when you check out Find a Grave, it lists two children from the Dickey family who died in 1865 and are buried here. There is a book called The History of the Union Baptist Church, but sadly I couldn't find a copy anywhere to add to this mini documentary. It's written by someone who's actually buried here. Regardless, we'll meet a few people in this heavily history-loaded cemetery. We'll meet a family who fled a Russian king, meet one of the founding members of the church here, see one of the most unique headstone markings to date on this channel, hear an example of a split family during the Civil War, learn about the Indian Wars during the 1870s in the Wild West, and finally hear the story of a Confederate Special Forces team whose primary responsibility was protecting cattle. And our first stop is the resting place of Riley Abel Hurlbert, born in 1805 in New York. Shows him marrying Anne Reed, who's buried just a few feet away from him. He married her in Ohio in 1827. I think they were in Missouri for a bit because a few of their kids were born there. Eventually, they realized I'm in Missouri and decided to move west to Oregon in 1851. I always have the same trouble with that particular year for some reason. Nothing too interesting. However, one big event happened in America that affected Oregon. Congress passed the Donation Land Claim Act. This granted land to settlers. Riley and his wife would arrive in Oregon on September 15th, 1851, and by 1852, April, they would secure a donation land claim. Riley eventually moved to Polk County in 1870, though, guessing because his wife died in 1863. This is probably one of the more unique headstones we've come across on this channel of Franz Kucher, displaying the cross with 4 stars above it. From what I read, stars typically represent divine guidance. Some websites said multiple stars represent the Star of Bethlehem. There's also the famous Southern Cross from the constellation Crux, consisting of 4 bright stars from Mark Twain's Following the Equator. Regardless of its cultural meaning, it's a very cool find and design, and I thought I'd share it with you guys. We'll check it out during the tour too. And enjoying the morning sunlight is a headstone of Thomas Henry Marchahead. Born in 1839 in the small hamlet of Altamore, New York, home of the famous artist Milton Avery. You'll retain that information, I know. As you can see by now, he is a Civil War vet serving in the 110th New York Infantry Regiment, Company K. Listed just a few engagements overall, Siege of Port Hudson, for example. However, they did fight in the Battle of Fort Myers, what was known as the southernmost land battle during the Civil War. Fort Myers, for the most part, was abandoned in 1858 post-Third Seminole War. The Union, however, claimed it and used it to confiscate cattle that was supposed to be for the Confederate Army, so basically cutting off their food supply. The first also served as a safe haven for escaped slaves and Northern supporters who just happened to be living in the South. This in turn caused the Confederates to form Florida's Special Cavalry Battalion, the Cow Cavarly. Primary duty? Protect cattle at all costs from the Union Army. Even had their own special flag. They were ordered to attack the fort and capture it at a certain point. Confederate troops fired a warning shot asking for the Union surrender. Captain James Doyle, Union fort commander at the time, replied with a letter saying, "Your demand for unconditional surrender has been received. I respectfully decline. I have force enough to maintain my position and will fight you to the last." Eventually, the Confederates were driven off and resulted in a Union victory. One example of division during the Civil War can be found at Hundley Sever Maloney's headstone. He served on the Union side for the 4th Tennessee Infantry. Born in 1849 and joined the Civil War front at the age of 15. I guess he lied about his age and said he was 18 at the time. One of his brothers, Thomas Maloney, joined the Union side as well, serving in the Tennessee Cavalry. However, for our Tennessee viewers, you can find a graveyard out in the middle of nowhere in a farm field overgrown. There you will find Hundley's brother, who chose to serve in the Confederate 5th Tennessee Cavalry instead. And let's stop at William Metzer's resting place. Not a whole lot of information on him particularly, but if you can see on his headstone, it says Bannock Indian War veteran. That particular war took place in 1878 in Idaho and Oregon and was between the United States and the Paiute, Shoshone, and Bannock people. The war would feature U.S. Commander Oliver Otis Howard, aka the Christian general, who based his decisions on religious devotion. He had quite the resume going into this battle. He served as a Union general in the Civil War and had a reputation for wanting to protect freed blacks from hostile conditions, but was often ignored due to his lack of power, apparently. He also lost his right arm during the Civil War in the Battle of Seven Pines. In 1874, he was called upon to command an army against the Nez Perce. In that war, Howard would show just how brutal he was with his decisions at times. He gave the Nez Perce 30 days to move on to their reservation, or else. From what I read, is an impossible deadline and nowhere near realistic for the Native Americans to make that move. One of the prime leaders of the tribe did try to plead with Howard that they needed more time. It just wasn't realistic, but dude just does not play around. He is quoted as telling the chief, "I am telling you, 30 days you have to move in. I am the man to tell you what you must do. You will come on the reservation within the time I tell you. If not, soldiers will put you there or shoot you down," end quote. A little rude, but point was made to the chief. Then Howard arrested him, just further infuriate the Nez Perce people, just, poking at him. Howard would eventually win that war, but it wasn't easy from my readings. The Nez Perce were praised as highly skilled fighters. He would also be involved with battles against the Apache Indians. So by the time the Bannock Indian War came into play, Howard was more than prepared and had a lot of experience. Pretty much just wore them down throughout the battle to the point the Bannock were so spread out that forming up to face the U.S. was near impossible at that point. Coincidentally, Howard used to have a house in downtown Portland, Oregon. And this is the Schubert plot. I think I'm saying that right. I'm more interested in Peter's story. He was born in the Republic of Crimea, Ukraine in 1810. Crimea has a very interesting history, and a rough one. From what I read, it's basically a self-governed peninsula south of Ukraine. In 1774, Catherine the Great defeated the Ottoman Empire, thus creating Crimea to be politically independent. The Crimea War broke out in 1853, and guessing some political play was at hand. However, the queen at the time was overturned. She seemed pretty easygoing based on a nice finding grade write-up about her, and that she let Russian German families worship any way they pleased. And a big bonus, if they didn't believe in the military war, they didn't have to join. I imagine this didn't sit well with societies back then, and when she was overturned, a king took over and pretty much deleted all her nice rules. You had to join the military, or death was your punishment. Also, you had to worship the way we tell you. So with that said, Peter had 2 boys at the time, so it was decided they would leave for America, more specifically South Dakota, mainly because absolutely nobody wanted to live in this area at the time, so they did their thing and spoke their own language up there. They were pretty happy. They would eventually move to Oregon, unsure on the year though, but late arrivals into this area, but an interesting history lesson, an escape from a war-torn area across the seas. Not a whole lot of information on Hankinson F. Reed, but one of the founding members of the Union Baptist Church and one of the first ministers here, so I thought we'd just stop by for fun and check out his headstone. Alrighty, time for the tour. This one was really fun. I highly recommend this one. I didn't know what to think of this one. It's one on my list for a very long time. I don't know why, I just never looked into it till recently. I think one of my subscribers actually recommended it, and so I'm sorry if I'm not giving you credit. We'll stop at the sign here so you could read up on it. They had a handy map behind there that was great. Everything was alphabetical order, thank God, because I've been at places before that weren't alphabetical order, and it just made things difficult. This one's done very well. I was kind of freaked out because I kept hearing this noise, and there was all these acorns falling, hitting that roof. Kind of freaked me out a little bit. I thought somebody was in the cemetery. will try to stop by the one headstone that had Bannock Indian War vet. I'm trying to remember who that was. Very loud truck coming by. That's kind of neat. There was a cow back there staring at me, creeping on me. But as soon as I walked past him, he took off. Pretty fast cow. He ran fast. This is in the back. Try to get out of the sunlight for you. Looks like it was just clean. By far, this is one of the coolest designs I've seen. Maybe someone out there knows what the 4 stars exactly represents. I couldn't really find an answer. I've never seen that before. But then again, I'm no expert. There are a few headstones here that aren't really headstones. They're just like piles of rocks. But I think they sort of associated a name with it, who it is. This is our Indian War vet, yeah. So hopefully it comes in. About Maloney. I believe that was the one family that was divided during the Civil War. Tennessee. Yeah, Tennessee was a pretty divided state during that time. Go check out this person way in the back. The morning cometh. Oh, this is a cool scene. Interesting designs there. Dickey is a really popular name here. I couldn't find much on them. I just know there's a lot of them. And this last name was cool too. Bolajak? Didn't find anything on them. Seems like one of those names that should be like a lot of history tied to it. I'm sure it does. Maybe I just didn't find anything during my searches. There's Abel. As you can see, there's quite a bit of them here. Yeah, so that's the old sign. Maybe an old shop. I think that tree's doing very well. I wonder how long it's been there. Bronson. I haven't really seen any of those pile of rocks. I don't know. There's one here, but it looks like it used to be a headstone. It looks like it just cracked off. Somebody hidden in the back here. Who are you? Rosa. Atherton? Cool place. Show you more of the church here. I said, don't think we could see inside. Not even sure if it's still in use, but one of the cooler cemeteries we visited and very loaded with history. I hope you enjoyed this one because I sure did. It was a nice day to get away. It's very sunny out. Anywho, if you have other cemeteries that you recommend in Oregon or in southern Washington, feel free to comment below. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're enjoying summer. It's finally getting warm. Have a good one, and thank you for watching.